Good day, bonjour. Hello, my name is Jonathan Lawrence, and I am here to speak to you today, one of the directors of Reset Dialogues on Civilizations and Reset Dialogues US. I'm also a professor at Boston College, where I teach and research on religion and politics. We are very excited to be here at the Paris Peace Forum, an annual event whose auspicious beginnings we have admired from afar. It is an honor to have the opportunity to hear from world leaders on the most urgent issues of global governance, and to do so in the illustrious company of fellow international nonprofit organizations and NGOs who are out there making a difference in what we know are very difficult global circumstances. So we are here to learn from you in these days. We're here to make new acquaintances. Therefore, I would urge you to please feel free to submit questions via the chat during the presentation. If there's something I can answer that's immediately relevant, or during the last minutes of our session today. If you're watching this on a recording, then of course, please feel free to contact us with Twitter or Facebook or email, and we will put that information up. For the francophone audience, je vous prie de m'excuser de ne pas m'exprimer en français. J'aurais bien aimé, mais effectivement, ce sera plus efficace que je parle dans ma langue maternelle, mais vous pouvez également m'écrire ou me laisser des messages en langue française, bien sûr. So let me begin with our PowerPoint presentation to present our association to you, why we believe what we're doing is so important, and why we think we have something concrete to bring as a solution. So we are an international organization with offices in Milan and in Boston. We have a history of institutional partnerships around the Mediterranean and North America, in Tunisia, Morocco, Turkey, the United States. And the urgency of our mission at Reset Dialogues has been underscored by what has been a very challenging 2020. And the title of today's presentation is Promoting Pluralism amidst pandemic and protest, which indeed evokes the specificity of our moment. There's an atmosphere of tensions and unprecedented polarization in the democratic and democratizing world. And Reset Dialogues has been working to bring some light and dialogue to this tense moment in history. So I'd like to take this opportunity to present our work and to make the case for why Reset Dialogues contains the seeds of solutions to a major problem that we are facing. I'd also like to enumerate the reasons why Reset Dialogues needs your support, because we are actively seeking partners who also recognize the value of dialogue. While I am the one addressing you today on behalf of our US office, I also bear the greetings, of course, of the entire team of colleagues in Milan, led by our chairman, Giancarlo Bosetti, and we would all be here eager to hear from you to engage in a conversation. So to give you a bit of background, Reset Dialogues was born of an imperative to improve democratic resilience in the face of 21st century challenges, from terrorism to financial crises and refugee flows, as well as what is really the day-to-day work of democracy, of keeping opposing sides in major cultural and political debates in dialogue with one another. So we address the concrete threats to liberal democracy and to cultural political pluralism that emerge at each turn in three ways. We do this by crossing cultures with an expanding network of top scholars and public intellectuals and young leaders in the fields of education, journalism, and civil society. We also do this by convening minds in training, seminars, and in workshops and symposiums. And finally, we do this by circulating ideas through our internet presence, online articles, and also our book-length monographs and studies. So our mission is to promote democracy, to promote pluralism, to promote the rule of law and human rights by conveying timely analysis to the general public. We believe that the best way to strengthen liberal democracy is to engage in serious and respectful conversation with high intellectual standards, informed by the soundest social science and by perspectives from the humanities. This remains vital amidst global pandemic and widespread protests for racial justice and the necessary reckoning with the legacies of colonialism and slavery. From the realm of foreign policy to the politics of an identity, a number of unresolved questions haunt our liberal democratic systems and ask us to get to the bottom of where sovereignty truly resides and what is the tradition that we can call upon to preserve a pluralistic present and future. So, notwithstanding the uncertainty that we all face right now in terms of meeting one another, we feel that we need to maintain and rebuild the pathways both during and after the coronavirus pandemic. And we need to do this to help prepare and lay the groundwork for what always comes next. That is to say, the aftermath of crisis and change, the new normal for which we all need to be ready. So the historical situation is particularly delicate because there are populist forces with a strong anti-system orientation that have landed on top of many of our contemporary political scenes in the democratic and democratizing worlds. And in the past decade alone, we have been experiencing deep challenges. If we think about just the recent succession of events, the ongoing struggle for political and cultural liberties has taken many different shapes. It's taken the shape of debates between secularists and Islamists in France and Europe. It has taken the shape of a highly polarized political environment in the world's largest democracies. So what Reset Dialogues brings to this is a tried and tested model to the table, right? And our criterion is to bring together different voices, including people who don't normally speak to one another. And this is not the kind of activity that is matched by any university or think tank, even though they have enormous strengths upon which we draw. But we are totally independent from politics and large bureaucracy because we are not part of those worlds. We enlist top intellectuals and scholars from a broad range of backgrounds to teach in our workshops and to address our symposiums. We then solicit applications from our international network and beyond to locate the most promising group of 40 to 50 young professionals whom we can gather from the realms of education, journalism, and civil society to participate in the seminars that I will now present to you. Because I want to emphasize that it is this cadre of alumni, of seminar participants, now standing in the high hundreds, who have they're really at the heart of our impact of what we do, right? Because we are seeking to create a spark, right? This is one of the key themes of one of our long-time supporters of Reset Dialogues and Civilizations, the Henry Foundation, to create a spark with our mission, our programming, and our unique approach, because we have always felt that it's not enough to denounce radicalism without promoting concrete solutions. And these are not solutions that are brought from the outside world, but instead they rely upon the actors themselves. So with this, we seek to build resilience and capacity and civil society by training these young professionals and community leaders and strengthening public discourse with our seminars and publications. And together we wrestle with the foundations and the applications of the most elemental and critical resources for liberal democracy. For example, discovering the sources of pluralism and toleration. Seminar participants return to work with stronger foundation in the sources of pluralism and toleration and political and religious liberties that undergird our social frameworks. Many of them remain committed and connected to us through a virtual network, and they return to speak at seminars or submit articles to our website, which I will also present to you shortly. So our convening is helping to create new forms of thinking and new partnerships where they did not previously exist. And we believe this is so crucial because that is how we also think we arrive at new options out of our dead ends and new outcomes. These avenues of conflict resolution open up because we bring together people who formerly did not work together and who now do so on our neutral ground, on our neutral network and platform where constructive controversy can take place. So what is it that we do? Well, we have a unique combination of international reach and hybridity. We are a convening network, we are a publisher, we are a web resource, and this allows us to make connections across communal, religious, and national lines. Our programming provides tools for societies to be less vulnerable in future crises. So let me give you some recent examples of our conferencing and seminars. For the past 2 weeks, we held a Monday workshop in cooperation with the Corriere della Sera Foundation, the Italian daily newspaper in Milan, entitled Europe at a Crossroads, and we held 2 panels which were streamed on Zoom and available on our YouTube and Facebook pages, which wrestled with some of the key questions of post-pandemic life and included some of the most prominent figures in academia and politics, including a commissioner for European affairs and a member of the cabinet from the Italian government. And in the midst of our contested election in the United States, to give another example, our workshop taking place on the divided society after November 3rd will include a handful of top public intellectuals and journalists and political practitioners. The fact is that we face a host of difficulties and constitutional crises across the Western democracies and the democratizing world, in our chambers of parliament, in our halls of justice, on our streets. And these democracies know that if you simply prize political majoritarianism, that you risk defeatism because you risk the fate of minorities. And so we want to know and get to the bottom of how we can avoid becoming inured to the reality of an increasingly divided society. Now, that conference, which will be taking place in 2 weeks, I encourage you to register online for our website, is part of a larger cycle of conferences that we have been putting together for a couple of years now on the illiberal trend in contemporary democracies. And so when we think about the quality of liberal democracy, we are especially attuned to the critical importance of defining terms and knowing our own history and the history of our own political institutions, because we are all too aware of the lengthy struggles that took place to establish liberal democracy in the Western world. And we also know that the roots of liberal traditions can be found in our founding documents and in our legitimate traditions. And the same is true, we believe, for the Muslim majority world and beyond, which is another reason for our key focus on pluralism in North Africa. And here you can see a slide dedicated to sorry, I'm trying to make the presentation bigger. The slide is dedicated to the Reset School on Pluralism. Now, the Reset School on Pluralism is something that has taken place in North Africa for the past 3 summers and is scheduled to take place again next summer. We convene for 2 weeks a group of 40 to 50 young professionals from the fields that I mentioned. We bring them together with top scholars in the field of pluralism, and they have an intensive workshop for 2 weeks. And there is a capstone experience of a symposium that lasts 2 to 3 days, where international experts are flown in to hold a conference that is open to the general public. The 40 to 50 participants who are doctoral students, who are young journalists, who are young teachers, then participate in a follow-up semester in the fall term to work on the lessons learned and to implement actually the new ways of learning their own roots of pluralism and toleration from their own documents and their own traditions with the help of world-class scholars. Because the challenge of cultural and political pluralism is a common area for improvement, again, across both established and developing democracies. And this is one way that we have been addressing this. We worked for 2 years with the King Abdulaziz Foundation in Casablanca, and now we are in the midst of a partnership with the Tunisian Academy of Sciences, Letters, and Arts in Carthage, outside of Tunis, the academy known as Beit el-Hikmah. Tunisia, to take another example, is an embodiment of much of the dynamic and positive change that we see taking place in the region. And we have convened annually a Mediterranean forum to discuss the surviving hopes of the Arab Spring, The next of these conferences will be held in December, in mid-December, focusing on precisely 10 years after the Arab Spring and the Tunisian Revolution. We believe that these revolutions in some ways represent other failed uprisings from Western political history. But we also believe that Tunisia has survived as an outpost and lighthouse of democracy, and that it provides a productive counterexample to coups and stymied reforms elsewhere. So we believe this is valid for the ongoing peaceful protests in Algeria, for example, or the signs that we saw earlier this year of unrest in Lebanon or Iraq, but it also suggests ways forward for regional neighbors like Morocco, Libya, Egypt. So our North Africa seminars and our Mediterranean Forum work together to create the kind of neutral platform and space that I was describing for some of the key actors, including key politicians from opposing political parties, Islamists, secularists included, and we have undertaken these workshops in cooperation with local civil society organizations, such as in Tunis, CAREP, which is the Center for Arab Policy Studies, as well as with Mominoun Without Borders. And in Europe, we've had other partners, including the Cini Foundation in Venice and the University of Ca' Foscari, also in Venice. The Venice Seminars is another of our signature events, annual events, which is a 2-week experience along the lines of what I described for Casablanca or Carthage. Those in North Africa have taken place at the end of June and into July. In Venice, however, we have held these at the end of May annually, and their focus has been on the sources of toleration. And I want to say that our seminars have always been held free of charge to our participants, with the support of our generous funders, whom I will thank towards the end of the presentation. But I want to say that we are used to meeting in some of the most significant, politically, historically, religiously, architecturally significant cities around the Mediterranean and around the United States. And we cannot wait to return there in person. I would say you can see some of the happy faces of the participants from just what seems like an eternity ago, but which was just one summer before last. And so while we are eager to return, of course, like everyone else, to the real world, in the meanwhile, we are continuing and expanding our network thanks to Zoom. And everyone knows the shortcomings of these platforms, but we also acknowledge that there are some ways that we all expand our reach, including to certain marginalized populations that, even if they're given a travel grant, simply don't have the resources or the time to travel to one of our conferences or seminars. I will now move right along to just let you know about our internet presence, because this is actually also a very important space for where our alumni network develops, many of whom return to contribute analysis, which we publish on the website. The website is very successful. It receives 200,000 hits a year, and it's a very useful resource. And I invite you all to visit it and to register for our newsletters, which I promise it's not spam. You will receive something every 1 to 2 weeks, and it will contain original, neutral analysis on these themes of cultural, religious, political pluralism and liberal democracy. So we publish analyses, which is really like a magazine, in some ways a continuation of a tradition we had on an Italian version of the website, of also publishing articles about global politics and pluralism. We also publish dossiers, which are akin to special editions of our magazine online, which collects a certain number of thematic articles together and releases them at once, and those are carefully curated by our editorial team. And I will also mention that we publish video interviews with experts, and these are professionally edited, short nuggets, 5 to 10 minutes at a time, and a valuable resource for hearing really top intellectuals and scholars in their own words, at ease, on the sidelines of one of our conferences or seminars, and it's a fantastic resource that I also invite you to visit. And finally, I'll just mention that we are trying to grow our readership, so I invite you to join it. And our visitors are fairly evenly distributed between Western Europe and the rest of the world, including a large portion from North America, as you can see, and also Turkey, and India, and elsewhere. And we skew younger, so that is an interesting, an analytic that you can draw from our analytic data online. And our publications are the other way that we communicate with the general public and with scholars to convey some of the lessons learned and concrete policy implications that we conclude at our conferences and seminars. Sometimes we will issue a journal of proceedings from the workshop. Sometimes we will locate, for example, what you can see there on the far right of your screen. We translated a very important volume by the Tunisian scholar Mohammed Haddad on Muslim reformism, and that joins other publications that we've done on the region, including one most recently edited by our colleague Federica Zoya on the Tunisian exception, which you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. So this is part of a growing library. I won't insist on all of the details here, but we have a number of volumes in preparation and that have recently appeared or are currently in the pipeline. And what they do is help crystallize a kind of intellectual and scholarly consensus, not around the meaning of a single term, but around the different uses that a single term may have across a variety of cultural or political contexts. So one of the volumes that was on the previous screen was called Comparative Secularisms. And this is a great example of what is a larger project on an intercultural lexicon that we are developing to define key concepts pertaining to scientific, political, and religious discourse, because we believe that, and this was really at the heart of our entire mission, where the fundamental meaning of terms is contested, then what you really need is clarity and critical thinking to support public debate. And so the lexicon, just like all of our work, is aimed at overcoming this gap of certain hard to translate concepts relating to religion, relating to liberal democracy. And so this is, I think, a good emblematic project, and one of the projects for which we are seeking, actively partners and support to help bring this interdisciplinary and comparative approach to the widest possible audience. So to conclude, I will just click quickly through a slide showing who our main team is located in Italy and in the United States. You can see Giancarlo Bosetti, our chair, Letizia Durante, our administrative officer, and the team located in Milan, Simone Disegni on editorial work and other project-based work, our two project coordinators, Ambassador Patrizio Fondi and Federica Zoya, and finally Sofia De Benedictis, who has been our embeds manager and has been working on everything else as well, like everyone on this amazing team. I want to also recognize our advisory boards and our executive boards of directors who have been very supportive, and to recognize also our collaborators in thematic areas. Finally, thank you to our supporters so far, especially the Carnegie Corporation and Hilary Wiesner, especially the Nomis Foundation and Markus Reinhardt, especially the Luce Foundation and Toby Volkman. Thank you also to Justin Weiss, the executive director of the Paris Peace Forum, and his incredible team. Congratulations to all on creating this amazing platform and convening such an amazing group of people. I've now given you an overview of our activities and programming, and as we think about our future, we look forward to strengthening our international network where it has taken root and to building it up where it is nascent or not yet in existence. And so I hope to hear from anyone interested in learning more, and I'm happy to take any questions, and I thank you for your time. So I see a question about how our organization engages with marginalized communities with limited access to academic circles and academia in its efforts. That is a very important question. In some cases, we have reached out to diplomatic partners whose local consulates or cultural centers are themselves involved in that sort of outreach. And when we canvass our networks, we are careful not to remain too internal in where we're looking, and to seek as broad a new audience as possible for each new group of participants, because it really is important to us to include as many cultures and countries of origin as possible. And so it's quite normal to see 10, 12, 15 different nationalities in our groups, as well as a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds, those who come from families with a tradition of formal education, and those without, and we are eager to keep being inclusive and to expand our inclusiveness. Thank you for that question. So here's a question about what are the most significant challenges to engaging opposing sides to coming to the table with one another. And what we have found actually is that because of we are maintaining a neutral reputation, that we are not associated with any left or right agenda, and we are often quite successful in asking people if they want to have a forum to present their views and to have a respectful, high-level conversation. And we find that there are so many serious interlocutors out there that are willing to heed that call. And I just want to say, I see now that we only have a few seconds left, so I would really encourage anyone who has the chance to see this message, to hear me, to please get in touch. And I will just put up the last slide where you can contact us, and invite you to email me directly, jonathan.lawrence@resetdialogues.org. There is also a WhatsApp and a FaceTime number there, and our website, resetdoc.org. Also, if you go to resetdialogues.org, it will point you to the same page. So thank you again to the Paris Peace Forum, and I look forward to hearing from you.